My recipe for buttermilk pie is the best. Buttermilk is a common ingredient in many old-fashioned Southern recipes, and this pie is no exception. It's delicious because of the sweet and tangy flavor combination, and it's easy to make because it requires so few ingredients. So it should be no surprise that buttermilk pie is one of the most popular Thanksgiving and Christmas desserts in the southern United States. This recipe starts off with one 9-inch pie crust. You could use store-bought, but if you know me, you know I made it from scratch. This is unbaked. I did nothing to it. In this bowl, I have 6 tablespoons of butter. I use 2 tablespoons to make the pie crust, but you could definitely round up to a full stick if you want. The star of this pie is of course the buttermilk, so I'm using 1 cup or 240 grams of buttermilk. Of course, it needs some sugar, so I'm going to use 1 1/4 cups of white granulated sugar, which as I measure would be 262 grams. I think you could do 1 cup if you want, but honestly, I think a little over a cup is probably best because this is a pie, this is a dessert, and you do want it to be sweet. So since the star of the show is kind of sour, we need some extra sugar to help balance that out. Some recipes call for 1 1/2 cups of sugar, so once I make the custard filling, I'm going to try it and see if I think it needs more. I'm also going to add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. You might be a bit surprised by that, but a bit of flour or a bit of cornmeal is very popular in southern custard pies like chess pie or something like that. And what's going to happen with the flour is that it's going to help hold the custard filling together, and it's also going to rise to the top, and it's going to help give the pie that brown topping that is so characteristic of old-fashioned buttermilk pie. I'm going to add 3 large eggs as well, and over here 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Almost all of the recipes call for a tablespoon of lemon juice, but if you want to do a tablespoon of vinegar, I think you could as well. 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. Nutmeg is kind of strong. Some recipes call for up to 1/4 teaspoon. I think you could leave it out if you want, but a lot of the traditional recipes do seem to include it. Most, but not all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to melt the butter in the microwave, and then I'll bring you back. I just finished melting the butter in the microwave, so it is a bit hot still. So instead of adding the eggs first, I'm going to add the sugar to help bring down the temperature because I do not want to cook the eggs. I'm going to make sure that that is mixed in, and then I'm going to add the eggs and buttermilk. Actually, why not add the flour now as well? Help bring down the temperature even more. This pie is so easy and so simple. Just a few ingredients that you probably already have on hand. If you do not have buttermilk, then what I would probably do is I would do 1 cup of evaporated milk along with an extra tablespoon of either lemon juice or white vinegar. Before I add my eggs, I'm going to add my other flavorings because like I said, I'm not sure exactly how much sugar I'm going to need. So I'm going to add everything else and then taste it and then see if it's sweet enough for me. I just finished mixing the custard filling. I tried it and I really like it. It's definitely sweet enough for me. I think some people might want 1 1/2 cups of sugar, but like I said, for me, 1 1/4 cups is fine. I think more than likely the minimum amount of sugar would be an equal amount of sugar to however much buttermilk you use. So I used a cup, 240 grams. I would use a little over a cup, 240 grams of sugar. Now that I tried it and I know I like it, I'm going to add my 3 eggs and I'm going to stir to combine. I mixed in the eggs and I did stir fairly vigorously like this for about 30 seconds to try and whip a little bit of air into it. I don't feel like dragging out my handheld mixer, and honestly, I don't think it really needs it. Just a spoon is simple enough. Now that my filling is ready, I'm going to pour it into my unbaked pie shell. I almost forgot to mention, I highly recommend baking this pie on something, such as, in my case, a pizza pan or a cookie sheet, something like that. This pie, as you can see, it's fairly full with something that's very liquidy, and if you try to carry this just by the sides of the pie plate, you run the risk of spilling. It's a lot easier to move this into the oven if it's on some sort of baking sheet. And just like with all pies, especially fruit pies, if your pie boils over, this will keep you from having to clean the bottom of the oven. I just pulled my buttermilk pie out of the oven. It was in at 350 for a total of 65 minutes. After 1 hour, I felt like the crust was getting a bit too brown, so I put some foil around the edges. And the center wasn't quite as firm as I would like it, but after a total of 65 minutes, I think that is right where I want it. This looked great, so I eagerly waited for it to cool down so that I could try it and see what it tasted like. Honestly, this buttermilk pie was delicious. I know that this video might be the first recipe for buttermilk pie that you've ever seen, and that the ingredients might seem a bit odd, but trust me, for such a simple pie, this is absolutely delicious. I know that you probably want to ask the question, what does buttermilk pie taste like? Although the flavor is fairly unique, I would describe it as a light and fluffy cheesecake that actually has multiple layers of textures, all inside of a normal pie crust. Buttermilk pie is similar to cheesecake in that it has that same sweet and tangy flavor combination. But without the cream cheese or the sour cream, it's a lot lighter. Although I wasn't surprised by the flavor, I was surprised by the layers of textures. As you can see in this up-close photo, there are multiple layers of textures. A crunchy top, a fluffy center, and a gooey bottom. Although I didn't notice any difference in flavors between the 3 layers, the unexpected contrast in textures definitely entertained my palate. Although I really like the flavor of this pie, including the level of sweetness, there's both a lemon and a chocolate version of buttermilk pie, so I might be experimenting with this recipe in the future. Like I already said, this recipe for buttermilk pie was really easy. The only thing to keep in mind when making this pie is that the filling has a lot of moisture. So you're going to have to cook this pie longer than a lot of other pies if you want the custard to fully set. Although my crust was fine, I think that covering it with foil maybe about halfway through would have been better, because then it would not have gotten quite as brown. Even though this recipe for buttermilk pie seems a bit unusual, it's actually quite delicious. It's an old-fashioned favorite dessert for Thanksgiving and Christmas in the southern United States, so you should definitely give it a try. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.